What's next for supply chain data? From predictive to proactive. Well, joining us today to speak about this important topic, Brandon Daniels, CEO of Exiger. Brandon, it's great to see you once again. Welcome.
Thank you, Russell. It's great to be here.
Brandon, I think it's fair to say that we are in an ocean of data right now. The question is it the right data? How is it that we're not able to take advantage of what is available? Not to the extent that we need to. So walk us through that. What's going on?
So the first thing is, when you think about a supply chain, right? When you think about a company's manufacturing line, 95% of what they utilize to actually build a product sits outside their ecosystem. So even though I'm awash with data internally, right? I've got a massive volume of data. I've got data on my internal operations. I've got data on my employees. It doesn't inform me on my suppliers, right? And so I've got data, and I've got a lot of data, but it might not be the right data to help me to improve my supply chain. The second thing is, there is a huge amount of information on these companies, right? There are data aggregators that help you to gather data. There's corporate registries. There's information on supply chains. There's import-export records. The problem is, a lot of that data, you really have to do a lot of analytics on to understand the recency, the quality, and the comprehensiveness of that data. And so being able to boil the ocean and bring it down to something meaningful, it's hard.
Well, we're going to talk about how you might be able to do that, but I want to look both internally and externally right now. Companies are struggling to be able to line up all of those things internally. I guess the question then is, well, why should they be concerned with the value chain itself, anything that's external? So walk us through that.
Well, when you're looking at your supply base, let's say you're a auto manufacturer, and one of the things that you have to buy are infotainment systems to go inside of your car. Well, we all know that auto manufacturing margins are razor thin, right? And so you have an infotainment system that's going into the car. The infotainment system is purchasing chips, and those chips are purchasing semiconductors. Well, you only have so much margin that you can give up when purchasing that chip. But if you can see who the suppliers are that are 3, 4, 5 tiers out, and how much that chip costs to make, well, then you can make determinations on, okay, do I want to go to that supplier directly and do a direct or embedded spend program, or do I want to purchase those in stock or in bulk and actually farm those out to my upstream suppliers and capture the cost differential? But you also might see things like, oh, that supplier is also supplying computer and electronics companies. That supplier is also supplying satellite companies, and they have huge margins. And so I'm not in a competition just with auto manufacturers. I'm actually in a competition with the satellite space, with the cloud computing space for the materials that I need. And so I need to think differently about how I'm going to manage value chain competition.
That's very, very interesting. And I think it leads into another question that I think may be top of mind for a number of people. It's argued that value chain data can be a competitive advantage if you're taking advantage of it, of course. And the question is, how does that happen? How do you make that happen work for you?
Yeah. So value chain data, again, it's the data about your supply chains across different markets, right? And so if you can, for instance, understand what other industries have demand on the products that you need to manufacture your goods, well, then you can start to monitor those industries for significant spikes in demand within those industries, buy ahead of the curve. You can start to look at the suppliers in those industries that are dependencies, see if those industries are dependencies for you. And then you can get a step ahead of those by creating direct supply chain orchestration and collaboration opportunities with those suppliers, so you can be ahead of the rest of the people in your industry when, for instance, another industry has a huge boom and pulls on the same materials that you need to service your customer. You've already got your demands and your requirements and your inventory at the top of the queue. It allows you to become resilient in the face of what could be seismic issues that aren't exactly in your industry, but impact your ability to service your customer.
Taking advantage of those spikes, very, very important there. You know, at the top of the interview, we talked about what's next for supply chain data, going from predictive to proactive. Well, you know, a lot of companies obviously are still dealing with predictive.
Yeah.
The question is, how is it that it's going to evolve into proactive? And maybe what we really need to do is to define our terminology. What do you mean by proactive supply chain data?
Yeah, proactive supply chain data helps you to see how you might have to mitigate issues into the future, right? We all experienced the Taiwan earthquake, and it was a devastating tragedy for the people of Taiwan. But it also had the capacity to potentially completely disable our semiconductor industry, right? If you can think about the capacity or the capability for that kind of seismic event to disable your ability to deliver your products and goods to your customers. And you can start to think about, okay, what are some alternative methods for getting those same semiconductors? What are some ways in which we can start to localize some of our production lines? What are the ways in which we can mitigate the risk of essentially shortages through inventory? What you can do is you can start to scenario model out your resilience at different levels of spend, right? And being proactive like that allows you to meet this sort of fine line between cost and resilience. Mm-hmm. Cost and being able to ensure that you're going to be able to deliver, you're going to be able to survive a pandemic or a major natural disaster. And so the difference between predictive and proactive is proactive actually leads you to make mitigation decisions today. It is actionable intelligence, whereas predictive, it is more scenario modeling, but you're not sure if those scenarios will ever come true. Having intelligence that tells you what things are likely, what things could impact you, is where proactive intelligence helps you get essentially actionable intelligence.
You know, what I'm thinking is that true resilience is not reactive, but proactive.
That's right.
Very important information there for the viewer. But for that viewer that's not really familiar with Exiger and just precisely what it does, talk to us for just a moment about the focus of the company and how it might enhance the operations of potential clients. So walk us through that.
Absolutely. So we've created a system that does three things. First, it allows you to get visibility and data on the companies that you work with, right? So it allows you to get visibility into the operations of facilities, the ownership, the full comprehensive business profile of the companies that you're working with, and then to prioritize the firmographic information about them to understand the risks that might, or opportunities that might be in those suppliers. Second, we take that supplier ecosystem and we expand that out to a supply chain. So we see where there are dependencies inside of your supply chain, where there are critical suppliers, and we can see where there might be risks in terms of forced labor, risks in terms of carbon emissions. Then the last thing that we do is we help you to, once you have that visibility, to start to orchestrate that supply chain. So now you know who your fifth tier supplier is for nickel. You can actually start to engage them to see whether or not they're delivering nickel necessary to actually make the nitinol, to actually get into your mesh, to actually get into the stent, to actually deliver that product to the hospital that you're, essentially selling to, right? And so we essentially help our customers get entity level intelligence, supply chain level intelligence, and product and component level intelligence to actually create a proactive posture inside of their supply chains.
Sounds like a truly comprehensive view, I must say.
Yeah.
Brandon, it's really great and valuable information, and I'm so glad that you had the time to speak with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Brandon Daniels. Brandon Daniels is with Exiger. He's speaking with us today about supply chain data going from predictive to proactive. Thanks for watching.